Hey, it's Larsson here for ADSR, and today I want to teach you how to make a very nice hardstyle kick sound, which can be very challenging. So first, let me show you the sound itself. So the workaround is not similar at all to what you can use to create a regular kick sound, and this is because you want to make the sound and want to build the sound around a very heavy distortion, you know. It is not based on pitch bending, of course it contains some, but the main focus is on the distortion and the filtering. So without further ado, let's hop into it and initialize a preset. I want to use a digital icon has kick waveform, which should be around here. Now I want to use a sync warping mode, and this is only to fade out the beginning and the end of the waveform. So we don't want to use any more of this knob, like repeating the cycle. We just want to have a fade on the waveform. So let's use the wavetable position at around 90%. This should be cool, 80-90. And I want to use the default saw wave on the second oscillator. Now this is a very short sound. I mean, the kick sound should not be very long. This is why I want to set the decay to 600-700 milliseconds and push back the sustain and drop the envelope 1 on the second oscillator level. So this is the sound what we are having now. It is not similar at all to any kind of hardstyle kick sound. Let's use 4 voices of unison on the first oscillator and pull back the detune a little. Also, we don't want to use too much randomization on the waveform, on the unison. So you can have a play around with the settings on the phase, you know, to create some interesting tones to the overall sound, but for this I think we will be fine. Okay, on the filters I want to use a bandpass filter, and you know, bandpass filter is always a very nice tool if you want to crunch your sound. Pull up the resonance and the drive also, like, very drastically, and it should sound something like this. This sounds very funny now, but it's okay because we are going to step forward and distort and, you know, shape the sound. Also, I want to use another envelope, just this time a little shorter envelope on the drive to pull it back a little on every hit. This can be helpful a little later. On LFO1 I want to use a similar shape to what we use in the envelopes, but this time I want to use a little more sustain basically, and we're going to use this LFO1 envelope mode and drop it onto LFO1. Something like this. Okay, and before we jump into the effects, let's add the sub, something like this, but with a distorted sign. Cool, this will behave pretty well with the distortion. So let's go to the effects, let's add the hyper dimension to the first step. This also will give some very nice tone when we distort it, so we're going to have a lot more organic kind of sound. And a filter will give us a nice tone before the distortion. So let's choose a comp H6 plus. Also push up the drive. But we don't want the full mix. But we already distorted our sound. So this is a very nice addition to it. Let's distort it now using the diode 1 shape. Push up and crank up the drive. This sounds a little funny now, so let's use some filtering before the distortion. And let's drop LFO1 at around 300 Hz, and the range should be at around 50. To shape this distortion, let's add the phaser, and what I want to do here is select a tone, what I want to use to shape only the kick part, because you know, this section here, this very slight sustaining kind of sound will act as a bass sound basically, but we're going to have this section as a kick sound, and I want to shape only this part. So I want to use LFO2 and make a nice little movement onto it only on this section. So this is why I want to add this to the mix knob. Well, something like this. But use it in envelope mode again. Okay, nice. We're having some very weird frequencies, so let's use the EQ to filter it out. Use a low pace filter, but we don't want too much resonance. Using LE41 and some low cut, basically, at around this. But the gain should be docked on every trigger. And all these effects should be before the distortion. As you can hear, the more sub we have, the less hardstyle-y, clappy kind of frequency we get. So this is why we need to cut back the very lows on this section only, but after it we want to have some more basic kind of distorted sound, not the kicky, the clappy kind of tone, but the basic kind of tone is what we want in this section, and in this section we want to have the kick sound. So this is the main goal of that. I want to add a flanger too, but we don't want any movement, we want to have our own movement to it. Let's push back the feed, the phase, and let's add LE41 to the mix again and add the range which looks something like this. Just a very slight effect, but it makes some very nice difference to it. And the compressor is a very important part here. And to the end, I want to use envelope 2, envelope 3 to create some punchy kind of tone using the master tune. So let's go to the matrix tab, choose envelope 3, and the destination should be the global master tune. And let's tune it to our taste. Okay, so this is a sound. It is very simple, basically, once you have the workaround. But without that, it can be very challenging, and I hope I helped you a lot. I was Larsson, and see you next time, guys. Bye bye.